If she doesn't, there you
Perfect.
go. I like
Good,
this
we're good.
one. Right, afternoon, everybody, or if you're watching this on catch up after evening or whatever time it happens to be with you. My name's Scott Alexander. I'm chairing today's MII TED Talk Club. We've just been watching Thandiwe Newton and her presentation about embracing otherness and embracing myself. We have a full panel today. I'll introduce them one by one and ask them the normal opening question, which is give me one thing you've taken away from today's talk. Our first speaker is all the way from Chicago. It's Janie Buzek, is principal of the Collaborative Communication Group, an executive coaching, consulting, and mediation firm based in Chicago area. For over 20 years, Jane has enjoyed engaging clients as a facilitator, coach, consultant, and mediator at every level and across multiple industries, including federal, state, and local government, medicine, law, manufacturing, and pharmaceutical marketing. Jane has mediated hundreds of cases ranging from gang crime to eviction to human rights charges. Janie, give me one thing you've taken from that talk by Thandiwe Newton.
I think the thing that most powerfully struck me is when Thandiwe talks about belongingness, and she was trying to see where she fit in, and she didn't feel that she fit in. She felt other, and I can't help but think that otherness doesn't have to negate community or togetherness, or even as she talks about oneness, and that it's in our shared exploration of each other's otherness is where we can actually meet in the middle.
Okay, well, that's a very good thing. So we'll come back to all of that, that otherness and people that are feeling like they're not belonging, because a lot of that comes across, obviously, in any kind of dispute and mediation. But I'll go to Andre next. Andre is the president of MII, founder of Acorn Resolution. She is an accredited MII mediator, holds a master's in mediation and conflict intervention. She has had specialist training in separating couples and child inclusive mediation. Andre is a certified synergy conflict management coach. She is also the MII lead for collaboration with the Irish Red Cross. Hello, Andre, our president, our glorious leader. Give us something that you took from that talk by.
I think what is it was really interesting. One of my key values in everything I do is connection. And for me, as I was listening to, that TED Talk, that whole piece about connecting, either connecting with self, connecting with others, connecting as a oneness. So for me, that piece was really about when you understand that we don't have to be connected to the self that we project, that it actually maybe opens a doorway for us to connect with everyone else. So connection is my key takeaway from it.
Connections, brilliant, and part of mediation, the big part of that is trying to help people connect where they've been disconnected. That is very good. I will come to Alona because I see you next on my screen. Alona Kublik left her home country of Germany with her family in 2011 to live in the southwest of France, and why not? In 2016, they moved to Ireland. Why? For a year, where she discovered her love for our island and its people. Since 2019, she's been on the panel of mediators of Family Mediation NI and Emin registered international elder mediator as well. She's also CEDAR accredited and a member of the Association of European Mediators in Paris. Same question. Ilona, give us something that you've taken away from that presentation.
Thank you for that, Scott. I think it's that the self is not constant, so that we are always changing, also our self is always changing. Although I think that there's a base in us, which is a fixed something in us, where we can come back and find refuge too, if we need to. And but that itself is changed by everybody we meet, everybody we work with, everybody we see or have any kind of connection, as you say, Andrea, with. And and if we accept that, if I accept that, then I can be influenced, but also adaptable, flexible, and I can take all this into the mediation and meet the people with respect and awareness and openness. Yeah, so I think that's it.
So we've got three themes already. There's the belongingness / otherness coming in there, the connectivity of people, and an understanding of self, which is not constant. It flashes around, but also that self-awareness that you've been raising. So our fourth member of the panel, and not least, but probably feeling completely excluded because she's last pick today, is Avril Sheridan. As a former litigation solicitor, don't hold that against her, of 22 years' experience, who has seen the light and is now a full-time mediator with particular expertise in the area of separating couples with a focus on client-centric solutions. Avril is proud to offer her expertise in navigating complex family dynamics. Her background equips her to guide you through the intricacies of conflict resolution, ensuring a swift and effective path forward. Last month, no, it wasn't, it was the month before, Avril was named most professional mediator. Should have updated this. Mediator in South Dublin by the EU Business News Irish Enterprise Awards. Welcome, Avril. Give me one thing you've taken from the video.
I think what I took from the video, which is different to what everybody else took, but I felt that myself is constantly changing because I have to be curious about who's in front of me to connect. So I have to kind of keep asking questions to connect with them. And that changes within the mediation process. So even myself is constantly changing. That's what I took from it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this constant curiosity, constant change, which kind of ties in with the Lona's point of the self is there, but there's a base
Yeah.
that goes to identity. I'm picking up. There's the connectivity between people, and there's a need for belonging. So if I stick with you, Avril, then let's take this theme because you're looking at it from a mediator's point of view.
Yeah.
Also, those parties are also changing, right? They change when they hear each other's story. They change when there's some kind of impact
Yes.
statement, whatever it happens to be. So
Yes.
talk about this self-awareness and your constant curiosity and the need for that.
Well, I think look, you have a core yourself, and you know you're bringing your core into the room, but what you project is something quite different because you've got to ensure that you align with the parties.
Mhm.
So that's it's kind of getting an alignment. It means they're getting an alignment with each other because they're exploring. And it's just an exploratory, totally exploratory, I think. You don't know where it's going to land. Yeah, that's the great thing about mediation.
Yeah.
You can guide by maybe asking particular questions, but it's better maybe to let it land where it lands, because that way I think the people will get a better connection, and
Okay.
it's a better way of resolving the conflict. That's my view. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. What I'm picking up here is that there's an element of job for the mediator. We're not
Yeah.
homeopathic, but our real job is to try help that connectivity. So I'm going to go back to Andrew here because you were the one that raised connectivity in the first place. If Avril's correct that our main job is to connect those two people
Yeah.
in the room, usually two, with theirs. What can you take away from the video, or what can you add to as a mediator that would be of most value here?
Yeah. I suppose when people are generally in conflict, they don't necessarily present their best self if we're looking at self. So when we're in conflict, the self maybe that we project is one of defense or one of protection, maybe one of shame, one of whatever, depending on what the conflict is over. So when we meet parties in a room or we meet people in a room, what they've experienced of each other is probably not the best version of self. And I think as a mediator, when we're bringing people together in a room, we're really kind of helping them explore the other selves of the people beside them. So really trying to understand where they're coming from and also what else they are, that actually they're more than the projection that they've seen, or they're more than the problem, and they're not necessarily the problem, so that whole concept in mediation of separating the person from the problem. So in some way in a mediation, when we allow that space to separate the person from the problem, But what we're hopefully in some way allowing the other person see is a glimpse of the essence of that person. And it's that essence that allows them to connect. So by separating the person from the problem, we're able to bring that essence. And I think it's about exploring the self that's projected and the self that maybe is hidden and maybe is not seen by the other person. And in that way, I think we can help them connect.
Okay, I'll bring in Jane here. Janie, you mentioned about belongingness and otherness, and I'm sensing from Andre that there's with this projection that people have that they're coming here to try and impress. Sometimes they're even trying to beat the other person at the start, although they shouldn't because they've signed an agreement saying that they're going to explore how they can explore it. They ought to be beaten across the head with that agreement until they agree that they're going to settle, as we all know. But maybe explore more of that, the points that Andrew was chatting about those other selves, those different projections, and how that might impact on the relationships.
Yeah, what Andrea said was that was one of the things that I took away as well, is that we bring ourself, and to your point, not our best self to a mediation when we're in conflict. It's the one that's very self-preserving and competitive. And that mediation is an opportunity, I feel, that we are able to help them explore and share their essences. Thandiwe, sorry, I'm mispronouncing her name, talks about, she has like this paradigm of there's the self and there's otherness, and then there's the essence and oneness. And from the way I understood her to explain it, we are trying to get from the self and otherizing people to honoring our essence, and in so doing become one, or enter oneness, however she defines that. But that's what I took away. And I feel that in mediation, that's a very powerful opportunity that we have to help the parties do that.
So how would you do that in practice? How could you, because most people coming into mediation, my experience anyway, don't have a degree in sociology like you, okay? So they maybe don't have that understanding of otherness, of self. They haven't just watched the TED Talk video from Thandiwe Newton and going, yeah, I've got this. I've got to reconnect. I've got to realize that everybody is as one, and I just got to slot in there, right? So how do you help them?
So, Scott, I actually came prepared with an example.
Well done. That's what I
Fantastic.
like to
Well
say.
done.
Help us.
Very nerdy, can't
We'll have
help
you
myself.
back.
So I wrote it down just because my memory is not great. But so I'm a facilitative mediator. So I focus on helping parties identify their underlying needs and interests, right? So for example, let's say there's a dispute involving allegations of firing based on ethnic origin. So if the complainant initially demands $1,000 in back pay, $5,000 in pain and suffering, the underlying needs and interests approach, which will hopefully get to the essence, right? Let's just say their demand is their self, right? Their essence would be their underlying needs and interests. So asking questions like, well, what would that mean for you to receive this? And how would it feel for you if you received exactly what you asked for? We know as mediators, they're not going to get it necessarily, right? They're not going to get their opening demand. So the specificity of the response is going to help us, and more importantly, excuse me, help our client learn more about their underlying needs. So I feel when those underlying needs get explored and addressed and perhaps met, then it's sort of for both sides, then their essences are now in community with one another or interacting with each other. And that's where the effectiveness comes in. So that's how I might operationalize that.
Okay, so you take away the screen or the shield or whatever, and they're then exposed in the room. I'll come to Alona. You've got two people here. This is terrible, terrible imagery I've got now. But anyway, their other selves are there, and their vulnerabilities have been shown, perhaps their real selves, Alona. So how does anything from this video or anything from your experience help in this whole otherness and oneness and myself and so on? How does that help them? Or how does any of this help?
I was just thinking what you said before, what Andrea said before, and now Janie about how could we put this into practice in the mediation session. And when I go into mediation, and I respect myself for what I am, and I am supposed to respect the people sitting with me for what they are, and I'm not trying to change them. Me as a family mediator with like focus on children, what I always do is that after I welcome them in the first session and we go through the ground rules and so on, I ask them to pen picture their child or their children. So I'm writing down the names when they're born, and I really ask, okay, what color of hair, what's the hair color, what are they like? Do they have friends? Do they have a lot of friends? Do they read or whatever? And then you see it changes the people in a way like they come with their 5,000 and their 5,000 and they want to have something, but actually I find something in common with them, and the focus is on the child, so it's going away from their focus of I want to have the house, you want to have the car, so and so really many times the people start to smile, and it's really nice because it really smoothes them in and focuses them on their most important thing in their life, and that's their children. And they realize that whatever happens in the mediation, and they are going separate ways, but they will always be parents, and they will always be parents of their wonderful children. And so maybe it's an awareness that they are coming with their backpack and with their personality and with their self change in any way, and self by themselves as well in the couple, in the time when they have been a couple, and now changed again because they're separated. But there's something overlapping, and that's the children. And maybe this is the core of their ex or their gone connection, no? Because they separate as people, but they have still this connection of the children. And yeah, I find this really helpful. So maybe this is helpful for you as well. So it's really like to see where they are happy and where they see, and then to give them also focus on what do we work, why are we here in the mediation session.
Okay. So we've been through a situation. No, I get all that. So what we've effectively got here, I'll come to you, Andre, next, is from Alona's point. We've got a base, a core, if you like, of self, but that core can change as well. It changed with me when I became a parent, obviously. Changes with both parents. Unfortunately, you cannot get rid of those little darlings. You pay for them the rest of your life. You can't move them on. Is there anything, Andre, there? We were chatting earlier before we came on air just about Jungian elements of ego and collective unconscious and so on. Is there anything in here that you'd want to explore? And then I'm going to come to
I think first of all, just to expand
Oh,
around
sorry.
kind of the tools that could potentially be used. So I think part of what we do in mediation, and say in whether it's in family or workplace, when we're in that private session or that individual session at the start, in some way we help hold a mirror, because sometimes people are not aware of the self they're projecting, and we hold up a mirror. And then when we go into the joint session, in another way, we're holding up a mirror so each can see each other and themselves. And in that, then we're creating a space for mutualization. And that opportunity for mutualization and oneness is really key in that whole mediation piece. And if you go back to Jung then, and he talks about the ego of the self, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. Well, in some way, we are bringing the collective unconscious into the room by allowing that mirror. Now, we do it in a very safe way. I mean, we're not going in as a mediator to hold up a mirror to reflect shame back on the person, because that's not what we want to do, because we're not about judgment and we don't want a person to feel judged in the room. But I think it's really to allow that space, a space where they can see their own reflection and see the reflection of each other. And as a mediator, maybe the way we do that is around that mutualization and that bringing together. And I suppose even by mirroring that non-judgment, and bringing to, Janie spoke about going underneath the positions to the interests and the needs, and maybe even going towards going down further and going down to values. And if you think of when you go underneath values and that, recognition of each other's values and needs, and they don't have to accept them, it might be just an understanding, that's where we'll get that piece of connection. So it's when we go down that bit further, we get the connection with no judgment or shame attached. So I think that's what we can do as mediators, Scott. I hope that answered the question.
That's a fantastic answer. I'm going to continue with Avril now. Just this whole sense that we have of finding a connection, because essentially that is, but also the importance of the individual meetings, the one-to-ones that you might have, and figuring out safe answers. And if you're going to go down that route of values that Andrew just mentioned, have you ever played that values bingo?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's a fantastic coaching thing. If you probably have, you get like 30 or 40 words on a slide or a screen or whatever, and you have to pick the 10 that most represent you.
Oh,
Right. And that's hard. And then what happens is they say, right, get rid of three. And you go, oh, gee, but that's tough. And then they say, get rid of another four. And you come down to your essence, this core
right, okay,
that you
yeah.
have of self, which is three words that you might have, right?
Oh,
And they're all different because you never get simple. But you find an awful lot of people that have had kids that will be family that will put forward, and that'll be one of the ones that will be coming through. Forget that, right? You've got better things like honesty, integrity, all those kinds of things would be up there. All these good words, and have some, determined. The ones that you could cite in something else. Anyway, just chatting about that. I don't know. I don't think I've ever used values bingo in a mediation session, but I've done it in coaching um, where people have to figure out where they are. But you could do. So anyway, talk about this whole, how do you, as mediators, how can we best find these connectors that might be deemed in this video sense, if you like, the one we've watched, about a sense of oneness, the things that bring us together as opposed to the things that push us apart, and the importance of the individual meetings. Any comments on that?
I think a good way of doing it, like, okay, family mediation, you can focus on the children, but say in a workplace or another type of family dispute, which isn't necessarily involving children, like a probate dispute or something like that, um, it's more about focusing on how will you connect in the future? What will the next Christmas be like? What will the next this occasion be like? It's to have people to project how they are going to communicate going forward. And I think when people think along those lines, they have a much clearer picture of what their actual needs are.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that makes it very clear for people for some reason. It seems to be the break, I think, for people. And
Yeah.
that comes out at individual sessions and then, the joint session, because then they have a clarity and they're going into the joint session with, oh yeah, this is what's really important to me. So they have a clear, and that's important. That's really important.
Yeah, it's something that I'm picking up here, that what you're doing is you're breaking the thing that's pushing them apart or pulling them apart.
Yes.
And you're
Yeah.
saying, okay, let's go forward. Let's suppose you've solved this on a scale of 1 to 10, where you fix all those types of future focus
Yeah.
questions that we use in mediation that you don't use in an investigation, for instance, in the workplace.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Who should we bring in next? I think we'll bring back Janie for this question, and it's on the chat. In mediation, we invite parties to step outside of their rigid identities, the victim, the complainant, the aggressor, and engage with others as human beings. I think there's a parallel between the acting, in inverted commas, as a way to explore different selves with mediation, where we invite the parties to try on new perspectives and maybe play them in their minds. That's a lovely analogy, I think, Jenny.
Yeah, well, that's such a great question, and I'm going to piggyback on what Avril said. And first of all, I have to say, Scott, I wrote down values bingo, and maybe offline we can talk about what that looks like, because I think that's fabulous. And what Andrea said too about needs and interests, and you dig one step deeper, there's values, and that's such a great and important piece of mediation. And Avril, I was just thinking as well when you mentioned in joint or in private session, helping them to identify what is important or what they really value so that they can go back to joint session
Yeah.
and be more clear in themselves. What I think is great is to bring back the trying on different hats, so to speak,
Yes.
asking, what do you think, Mary feels? What do you
Yeah.
think Mary values the most? Do you think is it similar? Might it be different? How might that, and then, getting to the point, not, right away, but how might both of those or all of those values sort of be met? If there's the family obviously would be one, but sometimes they'll be different, but can they also coincide? So, and the idea of, seeing these different perspectives is a great tool in mediation to help
Yeah.
parties have more compassion and understanding for each other, which of course will lead to a better resolution.
Well, we hope anyway, if they'll accept it. Andre, if we come to you, just following on from that, this question that's been brought up here about trying on, if you like, different cells or putting on different costumes. People have different, what's the word? Descriptors, different roles. It
Mhm.
could be the breadwinner. It could be the homemaker. It could be the bread maker. It could be the whatever, right? Could be the funny one, right? I'm the funny granda, right? Type of stuff. I'm the one that they climb. They use a climbing frame and a punch bag or whatever, right? We have different roles depending on where we are. Are there times in mediation when you try and draw those out, or when people maybe take on a different sense of self?
Yeah, and I mean, look, it might be important. Sometimes people are afraid to step outside their roles. So, you might get in a mediation where somebody has always had the responsibility for something or a particular task. And that is their task. That is part of who they are. And the fact that they're really good at that task is part of who they are, their identity, because they're admired in some way for the way they do that task. And actually, because they're good at that task, they mightn't necessarily see that they've the capabilities to be good at something else. So sometimes in mediation, we might be kind of going, well, what would it be like for you to take on that responsibility? What would it be like? And sometimes if it is their task or responsibility, they don't necessarily want to allow the other person to be part of it either. So what would it be like to allow them to experience something like that? So sometimes we have real ownership over our roles because it's so connected to our identity and maybe connected to how people see us and our maybe the piece of admiration that we have in some way. So to allow the other person maybe take an opportunity to take on some of that responsibility, or even for us to try a different role. And I suppose another way that we might use it in mediation is, you know, for two parties together who maybe become really stuck and not be able to find a way forward, to actually ask them, well, if you were looking at this conflict, or if you were looking, that kind of, outside type question, if you were looking at this conflict and it was two of your work colleagues, maybe, what would you be advising them to do? Or what would you think they should do? Or what would your opinion be on that? Because they're not going to be judged on that, because they're stepping into, I mean, Newton talks about, dancing and acting, how she could take on those other roles and really feel the essence of who she is. So sometimes by allowing the party step into a different role, or even to be looking in at different role players, allows them the opportunity to connect to an essence that is a bit stuck in the mediation and where the mediation is. So I think it's really beneficial in that way too, and is a really good tool to use. Now, at the right time in mediation, you wouldn't be doing that very much at the start, but near the end of mediation, when you're maybe going into option development or at the end of that exploration stage. But I do think that it allows them to go into that essence and connect, without any judgment or kind of responsibility to it. A bit like Newton's dancing and acting.
Okay, that's very good. I'll bring in Alona now. Um, we're looking at the situation. I do workplace mediation. And I find that quite a few people, after they've been through mediation, because they've been asked questions, a bit like when you coach or mentor, they end up leaving. they discover going through this whole process, sometimes I don't want to be here anymore. And I'm picking up from Andre that people sometimes have these almost Damascene changes come along here, and how that might happen, Alona, in almost the relief of finally accepting that it's over in the family situation or something like that. Is there anything in there about this discovering a new sense of self that brings, I don't know, some kind of enlightenment or paradigm shift that creates goodness? I don't know. Without us leading, okay, without leading.
Okay, there was a little interruption. So is there anything? Could you just say the
No, just
sentence again,
no.
please?
Is
I
there
couldn't hear you.
anything in there about the fact that people go through change, they recognize change, and you're dealing with family situations where they maybe haven't wanted to let go of their sense as the head of the family or whatever other self
Mm.
they project. But once they're going through it, there's a relief and a release that changes their sense and creates some kind of goodness. Oh, you seem to have frozen. You seem to have frozen. See, this has never happened before. I'm going to, Janie, you're laughing, so I'll bring you in. It's over to you. It's over to you. If Alona's gone off, you come in, you smile, that's it. You get picked on.
Oh my goodness. Well, so what you just said resonates with me because, as a mediator, we are committed to the parties, and to the process, but not to outcome, at least in my in my practice. So I have found, and my focus is workplace, and I found that mediation can provide a great opportunity for people to realize, you know what, this isn't for me, or I don't want to work in this for this person, or I don't want to head this team. And that's a win
The
too.
internet. Can you hear me?
No, we can. We can hear you coming, but hold on 2 seconds, Alona. I can hear you now. But you
That's
can
really
finish.
all. That's really all. It's just that that's a win. Like we're not committed to, like, there's no particularly good outcome other than what is best for the parties. And so sometimes it is separation.
Okay. Alona, are you back? Nope. Well, what I'll do is I will go to Avril and I will say, here's Margaret. The next stage is you ask them to eliminate five, you say, and then down to three. Well, the way I did it was three and then five. And ask them to living the life in line with their three values. You can also do it on Pentameter or PowerPoint. So thanks very much, Margaret, for the bingo. And there's wee links there, folk, if you want to
Right,
check
it
up
should say Mentimeter. Sorry, I'm
yeah, you
so
should say that. Yeah, I
Oh,
was going to
right,
say that.
right,
Yeah.
right,
You
right.
can, you can bring them down. I was thinking there was only five. I thought it was related to the fact that you eliminate five. It was pentameter. There you go.
the key is on a sheet like that, it just asks them to think.
Yeah.
Or on the PowerPoint on the bingo, and then you can put their own ones on. Like they might have other ones. So you have a few blanks on the right hand side, and the key is: are they living in line with their behaviors? Are they living in whatever self they're coming in? Are they in line with them? They're consistent with themselves. And what you'll probably find is, as you all said, they're at their worst self. But it's a really good exercise for us all to do, just to see are we in alignment with where we want to be and who we want to be seen. It's a nice little exercise because we don't change our values like we change our socks.
Mm. And interestingly, Margaret, I've used that with a family group. Do you know where there's a family group that there mightn't necessarily be a conflict, but they're trying to do something kind of go
Yeah.
forward, to agree their I suppose agree their family code,
Yeah,
That's
their code, their ground rules, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And
brilliant.
one of the things I know, one of you, I think, was it, I know the lady who's gone, the American lady, she talked about, t getting people to think of others in the room, and so did Avril a little bit. And sometimes what I've done in kind of multi-party disputes is I'd give them a Lego piece or a marker, a thing that they could draw, but I'd give them Lego blocks and I'd say to them, how deep is your pain right now? Or your discomfort, whatever word you want to use. And the maximum they have is 10 blocks and they're in one color. And then I give them, I then introduce the other color for the other person and I say, how deep do you think the other color is pain in? And of course, they always think they're not suffering at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a bit like I'm all bunged up here and they're all good, laughing at me. But then I ask, it might be their peers. I give a third color. And I say, well, what do you think the peers who are watching you, what do you think their pain is? Or the children in the room, or the other partners, or whatever it might be. And it's really interesting when you bring in that third dimension, okay? Oftentimes they give them a high score, and then what you'd be saying was, what I say was, what bricks would you be able to take off in order to eliminate the pain of the others, like the children, for example, or their colleagues?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's almost a physiological way. They have to take the brick and move it, or they have to take the color on the scale they've done or whatever. And it's a real physiological way of shifting their mind that says, actually, I can do this and I will do this. Now, just how do I do it?
Oh, brilliant stuff. See, these are the kind of insights you get in
Interesting,
these
yeah.
MII TED Talks you wouldn't get anywhere else. You know,
No, yeah.
this is brilliant. Thank you so much, Margaret.
That's great.
I believe you're going to be speaking at the annual conference this year, so I don't know if it's going to be on bricks. You're going to be bringing along bricks
Yeah,
for
rigging the Lego.
No, I'm going to be speaking about community and cohesion, influenced by your president.
There we go. Thank you very much. Avril,
Yes.
we're coming near the end of our discussion here. Are there any other things that you'd like to have a look? I'm writing down here. There were some great lines from this woman, and I'm trying to figure out where where they were because I did write them down. We mentioned earlier about one of the jobs being to de-demonize each other. We've talked about the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. We've chatted about the death of self that we've had here before. We've looked at when the self is suspended, so is hate and divisiveness. So, are there any kind of phrases or any things in particular that you think, this would be handy. This would really help if you don't happen to have your Lego bricks or something else. Is there anything else that you think would be really useful from this? Just helping people say it's okay to be different. It's okay to be left out.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's whether their identity is fluid, I think. Isn't that what we're kind of looking at? So if that can be fluid, that puts them into a better position of being able to project a different self. You know, that's I could actually think of there, Scott.
Yeah, I was chatting to someone a while back, and they were telling me about their daughter. Well, I'm not going to go into any more details, but they're telling me about their daughter. And then there was a workplace dispute, and I said, well, what if your daughter had that problem? What would your reaction be?
Yeah. Mm.
And you go, now I get it. What would
Mm.
you do? Right. Oh, I get it. Could have been a better manager. And sometimes those things are about shifting the things. So I'm loving this brick
Yeah.
stuff. Uh,
Yeah, bricks are good, yeah.
Yep. And I'm looking here. I'm going to bring in Ilona, and seeing as you have come back somewhere, I know you're on the system. And this is from Margaret again. Great question, Richard. Authenticity can be fluid, I believe, in deep empathy, meeting others where they are at to try to move them to a place of better for them and all involved. Ilona, are you in?
Yeah, I like all involved because well, I don't want to move them. They have to move. I want them to move with me, or they have to move together. Authenticity is very important, and I think for the mediator going into a session to have a moment of reflection. So how do I want to go there in to collect yourself on the spirit of mediation we had on at the last conference. We had some goodies with us and say, okay, I have a stone, for example. I always have the stone in the hand and just say, okay, this stone is very old, mediation is very old, so I can do that, I can help people. And to really like to root myself in what I am and what I believe in mediation. And if I do so, then it's non-verbal. I think I express it via myself to them. And some people really pick up on that, and they say, well, listen, I know that we have a conflict, but I'm here to change it for the better and to change it for all of us and to move on. And I think there's this bit of being the mediation of being really like future focused and to visit the past if it's important, but really to see, okay, where are we now and where do we want to go? And and to find yourself then again, maybe even if you're separating people or people at workplace in conflict, that you see, okay, what is it? How do I want to meet them next morning at the coffee machine?
Yeah.
So do I still want to be the self I'm today, or do I want to be a different one? Maybe an adapted one, but maybe an understanding one, a more awareness one, or conscious one. So to move forward and to make them move forward with you, I think that's it's a very good question.
Okay, I'll bring in Jenny for a last comment. There's a quote there from Richard about Robert Burns, the bard himself, presumably quite popular over in America as well. But going back to dressing up and changing things, does a mediator behave authentically or act in a role, or is it an element of both, Jenny?
Hmm. Um, I am. That's a really good question. I think as we all have to act in a role as professionals, right? So we are playing the role of a mediator. So in some ways. So I was just thinking this morning about my son. My son Owen is 19. He goes to UCD. He's home now for a bit. And I was thinking, you know what's interesting? When I go into a mediation, I feel authentic. I'm asking questions. I'm being curious. Then I realized when Owen says something to me, I'm not always, oh, tell me more about that. Oh, how did that make you feel? And then I think two things. I think one, am I inauthentic in a mediation? Or two, would that be helpful for our relationship for me to do a little bit more of that? I think authenticity is a tricky one. It's a sort of a squidgy word. So I don't really know how to define it, but I would say that our role as mediators has to incorporate both the kind of our professional expertise or knowledge of the process, control of the process, and we have to bring our true selves and authentic and curiosity. And I think my dad used to say something to me, fake it till you make it. Sometimes you're in a mediation and you're like, I'm not curious, and that's okay. You still have to show that curiosity and bring that person out because that is your goal as the mediator is to help them understand themselves and the other person better. I don't know if that answers your question, Scott.
I think it does. I think what we're talking about is fluidity and a bit of both, and otherness as well as sense of self. I'll finish with you, Andre, our president. Any final comments to end today?
No, I suppose I just echo a lot of what our other panelists have said. And I think there was one part of that that we didn't touch on, and that was the piece around race. And that sense that, race is something that's really contrived by everybody wanting this self, and that it's not a scientific thing. And I think really as mediators, when we go into a room, there's often, you'll hear mediators being worried about dealing with where there's an accusation of somebody being racially discriminative, or there's issues on a community basis that have arisen over race or integration. And I think really what we're doing as mediators, and I think that's another important thing that came out of this that we didn't touch on, is that we go back to the human in front of us, and we use our questions of curiosity, and we ask questions, and we don't box them ourselves, that we remove that, boxes that have been designed by society around, cultural difference, and maybe color of skin or language or place of. Instead, we ask questions so that we can understand it and that people can share their story, because our culture and our experience is part of our story. And I suppose really as mediators, not to be afraid to go there and to ask those questions and to bring it into the room. And sometimes I said to somebody I was training the other day, invite the elephant into the room. It's going to come in and stomp all over you, So sometimes we have to gently invite the elephant in the room and get curious and ask questions. So I suppose echoing what everybody else said, but maybe one piece that we didn't touch on. So.
Okay. Man-made stuff. That's what we're going to talk about next time. Look, thank you everybody for coming along. Thank you to Andre, to Janie, to Ilona, and to Avril, and to everybody that threw in questions and listened. Hopefully you find those useful. I don't think we've anything set for July. We'll maybe give it a miss for July, August, and come back in September. If anyone's got some suggestions for a wonderful video, that we could, not about mediation, but that we could weave mediation in and out of, then send them in, and we'll have a look at bringing them in for other MII TED Talk clubs, if that's okay. Thank you to Alison back in the office, and we'll see you all again. So thank you very much, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.